Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Beginner JOSM training webinar, hosted by the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. I'm Benjamin Dills. I am the host for today, and we have three speakers who will be leading the training. They are Michael Heismeyer, a hot voting member and a hot training working group member, Nkintola Mercy, who is Executive Secretary at GIS for Africa, and Geoffrey Katarega, who is I'm sorry, Geoffrey, I did not update your title here. He is now the Community Manager for the East Africa Hub. Very sorry about that, Geoffrey. So they will be the ones who will be leading the training today. If at any time you have a question, please feel free to type it in the chat. You can also raise your hand using the raise hand function of Zoom to let us know that you have asked a question in the chat, and we'll take a look at it. And I will share it with the presenters. And thank you again for attending today, everyone. And with that, I will hand it over to Michael, Nkintola, and Geoffrey.
Yeah, so a warm welcome from my part as well. And so let me start here. Okay. Take a while here. Have some hiccup in here. Right now, let me see. Sorry for that here. Okay. All right. Can you see my web browser? I can get some feedback. That would be great. So anyways, can I get some feedback whether my screen sharing is running?
Yes, we can see your browser.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, first of all, we're talking about JOSM for beginners, which means at the very beginning, you should be able to get this software. And so the web page to, unless you already know that, to head towards is josm.openstreetmap.de. They've got a download page, which doesn't only contain a download for the jar file, but they also have a few hints on how to install it on different operating systems. The main point is that you first need to install Java, and you don't need a complete runtime environment. You only need the runtime environment, not the complete software development kit and no browser plugin. So that is all explained here. And there's also some kind of troubleshooting, how to get Java and how you can test whether your Java is working and things like that. So first thing here is get it from josm.openstreetmap.de and get it running according to the instructions you find in there. Once you've got that done, it'll open up pretty much like this. So one of the unless you have to select the proper language. So one of the very first things you should do is tweak some of its settings. You can either go to be really nice. Well, I think I have to start this again here. Just okay, now this looks way better. So you can just make sure that my menu is still working. So you can either go to Edit Preferences or hit the F12 key. And if the language shows unfamiliar, there is a language tab where you can switch to the proper language. By default, it should come up with the language of your operating system. Other than that, the very first thing you should do is tick the expert mode checkbox, because that will add a few items to the menu. And typically, although you might not be an expert yet, it is usually highly recommended to have this setting ticked. As I said, the language tab contains all the localizations, and there are quite a few here for this software. Other than that, you will mainly work in connection with our tasking manager, and that means that you need to get the connection service here up and running. This is the remote control tab. And the good point is you don't have to tweak with any of these settings, just enable it. And all the defaults here are pretty much okay. Next thing, which is recommended for a good startup, is to add a few plugins. Plugins are there to expand the functionality of JOSM. So we first have to download the list from the server. Doesn't take long. And there are two must-have plugins I'd like to recommend. So the first one here is the Buildings tool. Later today in this talk, you will hear what the Buildings tool is all about. It is really a great tool to draw buildings. And so you will really need this. And another one here is at the other end of the line. It's the utils plugin 2. Several utilities that make your life easier is a bit of an understatement. You'll soon get accustomed to all the things it will offer. Then you simply hit OK, and it downloads and installs them. We're not quite done with that. So here from the preferences, there is also the connection settings for the OSM server. And because you will not only want to download something, you also want to upload your work, of course, and that means you need some authorization. And the preferred method is this OAuth scheme. And if you'd like to authorize it, you simply hit Authorize Now, and then here you have to enter your credentials for the OpenStreetMap website, username and password, and then it exchanges a token with the JOSM software, which is stored in encrypted form. And then you don't have to worry about any authentication. You can simply work with this. So these are the 4 basic steps I would really like everybody to follow through. Check the expert mode. On the plugins page, install the Buildings tool and the utils plugin. Make sure that you have your connection settings right with the OSM server, and enable the remote control that you can work with HOTS Tasking Manager. That's basically the very first you need to get up and running. And after that, well, you can start downloading data. You will hear soon that there are a couple of options. We will also show you a bit how to do that in connection with the tasking manager. But for now, let's just use this green arrow and move somewhere. It's really, for this part here, doesn't matter at all where we are. Download a few data. And so that the UI is really populated. How is that organized? Well, on top, of course, you've got the typical menu, and then you've got a whole lot of toolbars here. So the toolbar on the left, at the first, here in the top part, contains the main drawing modes. By default, it comes up with a select mode, and the one you will need very frequently is the draw mode. You can see that there is also a shortcut A. Select has a shortcut S. And of course, they're also accessible from the menu. And here you can, I would say, the vast majority of all the things you can select has a shortcut, and you will soon get familiar with a few of them. S for select and A for draw. A, which basically means add nodes, will be one of the most frequently used. And if you've got the buildings tool installed, you will see this one here. This will be missing unless you have this plugin activated. Further down in here, you can switch a bit with a couple of windows. Those windows or tabs will open up here on the right side. Then at the bottom, there is an information box. You can see the geographic coordinates where you're currently moving around, and has a quite useful feature, because if someone tells you there's a problem or you might want to edit a certain coordinate, simply click on it and you get a box where you can freely enter coordinates and the screen will jump to that location. And you can also copy, of course, the current coordinates if you want to tell something, for instance, if you're asking a question. Then we've got a couple of panels on the right, and they are configurable, which means relations is something you won't need that often, so you simply can click it off and don't worry to remove anything you really don't need for the moment, because the Windows menu, you get them back easily. So this is the selection of all the menus which are currently available here of all those windows, and layers, tags, and selection is the ones which you will need most frequently. We will tell you later on what these layers are and what they mean. Selection, of course, is all the objects which you selected, and tags is where you can edit their properties. And on the top, you have a toolbar which contains a few of the items you might want to access more frequently from the menu. You can easily customize that. Simply move into the free area of this toolbar, click with the right mouse button and say configure. So it works in the usual way. Here you've got basically the complete menu tree, and then you can move around. For instance, historic places maybe is something you won't need that frequently, so I would simply delete this from the menu bar just to keep it a bit more uncluttered. And unless you're into tourism and food and drinks, you won't need those either, at least not while you're working on humanitarian projects. And but there is another one I'd like to draw your attention to, and that's from the file menu. There is not just a download data, there is also a file entry, download in current view. And that is something I really would like to see on my toolbar. Well, unfortunately, it adds them at the bottom, so it doesn't make sense to move it all the way up so that it's right below the download data. And then you confirm all that with OK. Now we've got a few here erased, and we've got that additional item, download map data in current view. Why is that so useful? Well, let's say you will be editing in this area, a small town. Now you feel, well, I need a little bit more context in here. And that means normally you would say, well, download, then you have to just adjust the download rectangle. So you would have to, well, is it this one or what else? Just leave it as it is. You see, I'm a bit outside of the downloaded area, which is marked here as a hatched area. And then I say download in current view, and it just loads those additional bits which are currently here. Something I need very often, so I always keep this here in my toolbar. So you will figure out what kinds of commands you will need more frequently, and so feel free to purge out and add additional items to the toolbar just to enhance your workflow. And well, that has been a pretty quick overview of the UI. Now I think Quintana Mercy will continue with some basic editing. With the concept of layers, I'm sorry, with the concept of layers. And I will be back talking about basic editing, but well, do we have any questions I should address?
One person did mention that they did not have the JOSM package installed at the beginning of the training. So actually, I would like to take a quick poll of the audience. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else who does not yet have JOSM installed, or does everyone have it at this point?
So it might be a good idea to include that in our, maybe in the registration page, or at least when we communicate this meeting, that someone wants to follow that in practice, would be a good idea to install it before.
Mm-hmm. There are not any questions about what you have been showing, Michael.
Okay, yeah. Oh yeah, and that was wrong, of course. Jeffrey is now going to talk about the concept of layers, and after his, I will be back with basic editing.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, so maybe one quick thing to mention for people who are having troubles installing their JOSM is that JOSM runs on Java runtime. So you have to install or update your Java runtime on your computer before you install JOSM. Otherwise, it will not run. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about layers. Michael was showing us how you can get started right directly within JOSM, but you can also get into editing by starting from another application. So you can connect to JOSM from your OpenStreetMap via Edit or through the tasking manager. So I'm going to show you that, and also how to manage and work with layers. So one thing which is very important, if you want to connect your JOSM to other applications, is to make sure that remote control is enabled. So I'll go ahead and show you that. So it's in Edit, Preferences, and then in my Preferences menu, I'll look for remote control. So yeah, always make sure this is switched on. Otherwise, JOSM will not be able to communicate with other applications. So mine is already enabled. If it's not, just check that box and then click OK. Yeah, so one way you can go into JOSM is through the OpenStreetMap website, which means you can search for any place you want to edit. And then when you go to edit with, then you'll be able to find your JOSM. So I'm just going to search for a place called Omphia, which is in northern Namibia. which is right here. So this is the place I want to edit using JOSM. So what I can do is now to go to my edit button. That's after zooming in. You realize that the edit button will be grayed out if you're not zoomed in. But once you're zoomed in, it will be active. So now that means I can go ahead and go to edit. So you can see there is two options. There is edit with ID, which is the in-browser editor. Also, you can edit with remote control, which will connect to JOSM amongst also other tools. So go ahead, but before doing that, make sure your JOSM is already running. So my JOSM is running. Now I'll go to my browser and click it on edit with JOSM. So right away, you're going to see data loaded in my JOSM. And I can see that from here. I can see there is the data layer. But one thing is that to be able to, make some changes here, you need also other layers. So one of the layers that we use, which is very important, is the imagery layer. So if I go to imagery here, I can see a couple of options. And I'm going to bring in Bing aerial imagery here. So this is how the Bing aerial imagery looks like within JOSM. And I can see here on my layers panel that it has been added. Now I have two layers, data layer and then Bing aerial imagery. And of course, I can also add another imagery if I want. For example, I can load Maxa premium imagery as well. Which means I can also compare one imagery with the other as I do editing. One thing you will observe here are these, this icon which looks like the eye. It shows that this is currently visible. So I can switch it on and off. So right now I've switched off the other layers. So only the data layer is visible. But I can also make the others visible. So that's one way you can bring in your data. You can see the layers here. Now I'm going to show you another way of getting your data into JOSM through the tasking manager. For those of you who contribute to hot projects through the tasking manager, you can also use JOSM. So I'm going to delete my layers. And what is happening here is that I'm just removing the layers from my project using this delete layer button. It's not that I'm deleting data from OpenStreetMap, no. I'm just removing them from my project. So I've gone back to the first, my homepage on JOSM. Okay, so the other way to get into JOSM is through the tasking manager, where you can go here and explore for existing projects on the tasking manager and choose one for mapping. So still I'm going to choose a project in Namibia here, which is project 10561, which is on FIA. So I'll go ahead and load that project, read through the description, and then go to contribute. So contribute will show you the tasks that are available for mapping. And what you have to do is choose one task and start map and choose map a task. But before you do that, always make sure you choose JOSM from editor here. Choose JOSM so that when you say map a task, it will open up in JOSM. You can also make JOSM your default editor in settings. That means whenever you choose any task for mapping, it will always open up in JOSM. So my JOSM is open here, and I've selected the editor as JOSM. So what I'm going to do is to go ahead and choose a task. I'll just choose a task here, and then go ahead and say map selected. So once you do that, you'll see a JOSM connecting to the server and downloading data. So this happens automatically. So I have OSM data. I also have boundary for the task. So because I'm connecting through the tasking manager, it has also loaded for me the boundary for my task, so that if I'm mapping, I'll just keep within this boundary. Yeah, sometimes depending on how the project was set up, the imagery may also pop up automatically. If it doesn't, you can still go to the instructions and read which instructions the project creator is asking you to use. So it says, please use Bing imagery. You may also switch to Maxa or Esri for comparison. So I'm going to go ahead and add the other layer. So this is Bing. I can see the features. And Michael will be taking you how to start mapping. I've also loaded Maxa for comparison. One of the things you can do with your layers, like I mentioned earlier, you can switch off a layer and on. The other thing you can do, you can also change the visibility of a layer. So if I click on this icon here, it will give me some more options. So I can change the opacity of my layer. I can change the colorfulness. So you can see the color changing. You can change the gamma. So sometimes if your layer is not very, your color, your image is not very clear, you can make some tweaks here to make it a bit more clear. Yeah, you can also change the order of the layers. For example, I can say, okay, I'm going to put Bing to the top. So I can move it using this arrow. You can see it rising. But now what I have done is that the data layer is in position number 2, and now I cannot see my existing data. So I'll change back Bing to the previous layer number 2. So it's always advisable to make sure your data layer is in position number 1. Otherwise, you'll not be able to see the existing data and may not be able to add, to make some changes. Yeah, so that's it with layers. I'll stop here unless there is any questions, and hand it over back to Michael.
We do have a question from the audience. If someone is mapping a place which is not in the tasking manager, and then after they have mapped and they're uploading, what should they put in the comments section if they're mapping something that is not from the tasking manager?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the comments are meant to communicate with others. So then that area, or like a modification to a road. That's like what you just describe a summary of the changes you are making to the map, because that's the importance of the change set comments, to communicate with other mappers what changes you were making to the map. That means even editing manager, that's manager will bring like a default comment. You can also always add like an extra comment to make the changes that you have made to OpenStreetMap more visible to other mappers. Thank you. Michael, back to you.
Okay, so there are no further questions so far, obviously. So let me share my screen again. And hopefully you should see my JOSM right now. And yeah, well, this is an area I downloaded where a few bits have been mapped, but there is still plenty of mapping to be done. And in the section on basic editing, I'll explain a little bit how to map the basic constituents of a map, points, lines, and objects like that, and how to get them into the database, basically how to add properties and tags to them. So this is kind of a Hamlet in here. So we all know the most basic object is a point. So we'll switch to adding mode by hitting the A key. And then so much. Okay, for some reason that didn't work. Okay, nevertheless, it's this icon in here. And then I can simply move right here towards the middle and add a point with a double click. When I want to add a single point, I just make a double click, and then I see, oh, what's got selected here is just a node. This node only has geographical coordinates and nothing else. So in order to make sure that people know what we're talking about, we need to add some tag. And those tags can be selected here from the presets menu. There you've got all the available kinds of objects. And in this case, it would be geography and then places. And then you've got the different kinds of populated entities. In this case, something like a hamlet would certainly be appropriate. And of course, when we're doing remote mapping, we usually don't know anything more about it. So just say apply preset. And now we've got a hamlet placed in here. And you see it got the place hamlet tag. So most of the objects which can be selected will be available in the presets menu, and we will soon add some of the most frequently you are using here onto the toolbar just to make things easier. Then the next thing you might ask yourself is, well, how on earth can I know what are the proper tags for a particular object? And the one place to look at here then is the OpenStreetMap wiki. The OpenStreetMap wiki has a page called Map Features, which contains virtually everything, any kind of object which can be put into the database. And so, for instance, if you're not sure about some kind of land use, you simply scroll down to land use, and then you see the different kinds of land uses which are commonly agreed as acceptable. You've got a certain description, and you've got a few illustrative pictures. So basically, you should be able to find anything you need here in this exhaustive list. There is a similar but much smaller compilation which goes the other way around, and that's the How to Map a page, also in the OpenStreetMap wiki, where you can say, well, I need, for instance, a courthouse, don't know how to tag that, and then here you'll find it. So typically you would enter the search function of your browser and see if you can figure out any of the things you're looking for. It's not an exhaustive list, but typically you can find a good explanation here how to tag that. There is one thing we'd like to point out, and I'll come to that right now when we're talking about different kinds of objects. So node is, of course, the simplest type. Lines are another kind of object. Lines can be used for rivers, for instance. So we'd like to enter that portion of the river, which you can see here. We just have to make sure it'll flow into the sea, so we can let it terminate here. And under oops, come on. Really don't like that. So under, okay, I have to shift it down a little bit. Doesn't work different to water. And then this would be a river. Let's apply this, and then it's a river. Whenever you'd like to get rid of a selection, you can hit the escape key. And when I'm done with editing, I usually press S for select pretty immediately so that I don't accidentally edit things I don't want to edit. So then we have something which doesn't look nice here. It's that crossing between a highway and this river. And of course, that's not as it should be. And we can see, well, this is pretty clearly not a ford, but a bridge. So here we already, so this road, okay. This here, that's something which can, something spurious. So first of all, we have to separate this road because we have to deal this stretch, which designates the bridge differently. So we hit the A, and we add nodes here on both sides of the bridge. So make sure that the highway is highlighted, and then make a double click here, and make another double click here. And then we have to select pretty much everything in here. So I go to S, make sure this icon is highlighted for select. Holding down the Shift key, I can select both of these nodes and the highway. And then you will see one of those icons here split away at the selected node. Means if I hit this one, it will split the road so that the complete road, which we have seen here previously, will be split into 3 segments: the one to the east of the bridge, the one to the west of the bridge, and the bridge itself. It'll ask which segment should keep the history of the whole way. Well, usually it selects the largest one, and that definitely is okay in most cases. And now we can select just the part which we created. Make sure that only the bridge is highlighted, not the entire road, because now we have to tell OpenStreetMap that this is not simply a road on the surface, but it's a bridge. So we can go back in here, and up here, we see this unclassified highway. Just click on it, and the form for editing this highway will open. Don't be intimidated by all the options it offers. We only need 2 in this case. We need to make sure, we need to check that it's a bridge. And then we have to edit the layer. Well, don't confuse this layer with any of the layers Jeffrey has been talking about right now. This is a different kind of layer. The layers you see up here is the vertical stack in the editor. The layer we talk about here, pretty similarly, is the vertical stack in the database, or as it's drawn on a map. And by default, the layer is 0, which means 0 is anything which you can find on the surface of the Earth. So, so the river will be on the surface of the Earth. So this bridge, of course, is. And in order to make this properly, we add a layer of 1. Apply this preset. And if you And now you see that it's drawn in a different, sorry for that, drawn in a different color, which indicates this is a bridge. Always make sure that crossing objects have their correct vertical order, and that's what the layer key is about. There is something more I'd like to mention when specifically talking about rivers. Well, in this case, the direction of the flow is pretty easy to determine, but what if the scenery looks like this? Then you're out of luck, and you should never guess wildly, because the river in terms of OpenStreetMap is a one-way street, so the direction is always the direction of the water flow. What can we do here? Well, first let's start mapping this river and do it a bit more coarsely now. And I would do it when putting it really onto the database. Just need a somewhat stretch in here so that we have something to look at. Should give us an impression. Presets, water, water, river. Again, we don't know anything more about this river, so we just apply the preset. Never just fill in any of these fields just because they ought to be filled in. They don't need to be filled in. Only fill in something like a name if you really know that, and you hardly know that when you're doing remote mapping. So what comes to your rescue is that there is a couple of imagery layers which show contour lines and relief. And one of them is I prefer the open cycle map layer. This can be activated from the imagery menu, and if you hadn't activated it previously, it won't be available here in this selection. Just go to imagery preferences, which is the complete portfolio of imagery layers. That's a very long list. Fortunately, it's sorted in some way, so worldwide layers come first, and then come countrywide layers. And you will soon see that open cycle map is in here. There are a couple of other layers you might want to experiment in this context. Open topo map is another one which show contour lines. Just select those which suit your preferences, and if you activate it, you get contour lines. And now we can see, well, there we are around the 50-meter elevation. At the other end here, we are certainly much closer to the 100 meters. So, oops, we just got it the wrong way around. So definitely the flow here is from southwest to northeast. So let's select it again. And most editing functions can be found here in the tools or the More Tools menu. And here pretty much on top is reverse way. And yeah, of course, it's going to ask you, be careful, because the software knows that the direction here has an importance for a stream, for a river. Yeah, but of course it's intentional. And now we've got it properly. So whenever you're editing a river and don't see where it's going to move in towards a larger river or the open sea, any topographic map which you can add here is quite a good indicator for the direction of flow. In that example here, well, we have been talking about that road, and it was presented as an unclassified road. Mostly when we are doing mapping from the tasking manager, we are mapping not exactly in industrialized countries, and they are the usual classification of roads as those of us who live in industrialized countries will have in mind is not quite applicable. So I've seen many people who tend to designate every road which does not have a paved surface as a track, and that is certainly not applicable. And as that is a pretty common problem, there is a wiki page dedicated to that which is called Highway Tag Africa. The name comes from the fact that it was developed for contexts in Africa first, but it is pretty well applicable for other contexts as well. And this one gives you a good indication what primary, secondary, tertiary, or unclassified highways can look at in those areas. And it also gives you a bit of kind of a better indication what kind of highway classification to select. So typically anything which connects settlements is at least an unclassified road, and a track really is only for access to agricultural and forestry areas. So even major roads can be unpaved in several countries. So this Highway Tag Africa page, which is often mentioned also in the instructions on the tasking manager, is certainly a good indicator if you look for highway classification. But well, first of all, you should always look at the instructions from the tasking manager page. Ideally, it should give you all the knowledge you need to get the proper tagging. If you are mapping on your own, there is one thing I would really like to ask you to have a look first. From the top page of the OpenStreetMap wiki, browse the mapping projects, go to the list of territory-based projects, and it will link you further on, and you'll certainly want a bookmark for that, because these are special guides for all the countries in the world, which means if you like, for instance, to go mapping in the Philippines, then you should jump to the Philippines page. And in most cases, not all countries have mapping guides of their own, but in this case, you will see, oh, there are mapping guidelines. Let's have a look at them. There is a mapping conventions page. And yep. And that will give you a better indication of the classification for that country, and also contains something about names, how you should spell that, and things like that. So if you're coming from the tasking manager, have a look at the project's instructions. Other than that, you might want to see if the country you're mapping in has a mapping guideline page like this one here for the Philippines, and many countries already have one. And another good option then, particularly when it comes to highway classification, is this Highway Tag Africa page. Yeah, that just leaves me with another object in here. We've been talking about points, we've been talking about lines. Well, and there are also, of course, polygons or closed lines, like in this land use here. Well, how to construct them? Just start adding nodes and make sure that the last point is on the first one. You can see that it snaps to it. It really snaps to it. Make a double click, and then you've got a closed polygon. And then you can say preset geography, land use, and then you'll find the residential area. Just apply it. We don't know any name. And then you've got residential area around here. There is something which might be quite useful if you want to add some kind of an object which is very close to another one, and you really don't want that it snaps onto it, but you have to put a point, for instance, pretty close to here. Hit your control key. And then this automatic snapping towards the nearest object is disabled. This is really very important if you add roads, for instance, in densely populated areas where there are lots of buildings. Never let a road snap onto a building, because hopefully, in reality, a road never runs into a building. So you see visually here this feedback that now it would snap it onto here. That's not what we'd like to see. So if you don't want that and you see that it would like to snap, hit the control key, and then you can place nodes pretty close to another object without snapping onto it. One of the techniques I have to use pretty often when mapping in densely populated areas. This should give you a basic introduction to how to map the most basic objects. I intentionally did not tell you about mapping buildings because it's one of the things you'll hear in the next part when there is we'll be talking about some shapes like buildings with and without holes, and that is much easier with the buildings tool, but I'm sure Untitled Mercy will tell you more about that. Do we have any questions I should address?
No, there are not any currently
No
open
further
questions in the
questions?
chat.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, so that's all for basic editing right now. And I think Untitled Mercy should continue.
Okay, sir. Can you all hear me?
Perfectly.
I'll be taking the second basic editing. I'll be sharing my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll be doing more of building. I'll be this is the taxing manager I'll be using. The tax I'll be using for my building. So I'll be talking more on building. That's me. I'm going to be using more of polygons to map out our buildings and other features that we see in it. So they have taught us how to connect our AutoSM to our JOSM. So let me share my. Okay. Okay, I'll pick a taxi and so I'll be using blink area. Okay, so I'll be mapping out the buildings we have in this particular tag. So before we start, I want to show you guys the shortcuts you're going to be making use of. Please, you can just do well to screenshot or note it down. So these are the basic tools you are going to be making use of while mapping out our building. So the shortcut keys. Can you see the screen for that? Can you see the screen for it?
We're just seeing the JOSM window.
Okay, can you see the screen now? My keyboard shortcut.
No, we're just seeing on the one window.
Okay. Now, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, these are the keyboard shortcuts to make use of it under our JOSM. So these are the basic tools on how to pick our tools on using our keyboard instead of taking it on the screen. So these our selection tools are going to mix of our keyboard X to pick the building tools, that's the B, and other keyboard and keyboard shortcuts. So you can do well to screenshot it before we go down to mapping and showing how to make use of picking our buildings too. Okay, now let's continue. So I'll make use of the shortcut key. That's me. I'll make use of B, and if you can see it here, you see that our tools over here. Yeah. So it's selected already. That means if you can see it now, it's selected. Like, can you all see it?
Yes, we see.
Yeah. Okay. So before we move forward, we are going to see that under our data, we have our set building size on how you can want to let your building to look like on the imagery as seen particularly. So the set building size, the set building shape to call a circle or any other shape you want it to look like, and the set building shape to rectangles on how you want it to look like on your building that are currently mapping. So I'm going to show you guys on how everything is done. So this is a building over here. So this is a building over here now. Can you see that? So we're going to make use of our building tools and pick it. That's something like this. So this is a building. We have actually mapped a building. So there's another one beside it too. Even if you check the image very well, you will see that we have another building at the edge of it here. So we're going to make use of our shortcut X to cut out the shape to form a roll shape of that building that is currently seen on the imagery. Hope you get that. So there's another building here too. So, and I'm trying to look for a complex building that we can use to map a complex. So you can use to map a complex shape to see how you're going to cut and add. So, and even to upload your what you have mapped on building, you just do it to come to your upload your data set. You're going to see it. So you put the current image you are using. You type anything, don't type it, your thoughts, maybe the hashtag of anything you are mapping at that particular time, and you're going to upload. So it's going to take a while to upload. So I want to look for another task, which is going to be more preferable.
Mercy, we have two questions right now. The
Okay.
first is, can you please show the shortcuts document again?
Okay,
Please,
okay, I'll do that right now.
and
Yeah,
please,
can you see my okay, I'm listening.
no, not yet.
Can you see the screen now? The keyboard shortcut.
No, yes, please hold it there for a moment.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, great. And then, can you please explain again the use of the X key for cutting?
Yeah, the S key the S key is to cut a building, a square building. I tried draw out to cut it. So I'm going to show you. Let me move to the. So I'm going to show you now. I'll be using this page as a free example. Yeah, can you see the screen now? So you are going to press the S key to cut, to pick a point, like to adjust a shape of a building to fit in the particular building you are mapping out at that particular time. Okay, to actually add it, like to actually add some nodes to it and to give it a better shape on what the building is actually talking about. So I want to look for a complex building to show an example of it. So you're going to zoom in to pick an edge, like to just let it to look fit to the building you are currently mapping at that particular time. Hope you all understand what I'm trying to say. So let me just look for you. So I'm going to delete this. So let me just look for you. Okay, let me use this as an example. Can we all see this building now? Yeah, can we all see it?
Yes, it's there.
Okay, so I'll be making use of my building tools just to draw a particular building. So I want to make use of the X2s. I'm on the X2s now to let this building, this particular building, fit into the shape you are seeing currently. So what I'm going to do is that I'll pick this particular edge, and draw it out to fit in. We see that there's an O here, which is not part of the building. The X2 is just for you to adjust it to fit in to what you are seeing exactly on the imagery. Yeah, can you see it now? So I'm going to zoom in here.
Yes, we can see it. So what you're doing is you're using the A key to add those extra nodes.
No, I'm
and then
I'm using the S key. The S key.
which key are you using to cut the lines?
I'm using the X for S3. X.
Oh, okay.
Not the S. The S is just for selecting tools. Just to select every building you have at that particular place. This for the X function, the X for snake. So that's what you're using to make a multiple selection on your imaging. So the X2s, X for X3, the X2 is just for you to pick and cut the building to fit in to the imagery, to the building you're seeing particularly. So let me just draw another one to just use that as an example too. So I'll be using the S key. So if you did a mistake, you can easily press Ctrl Z to actually backspace what you have done. You're going to Ctrl Z to undo what you have done. That's the key, Ctrl Z.
It appears that we have sadly lost Mercy for the moment. Does anyone else have any other questions right now? Are there any other points about drawing buildings for the moment that any of our other trainers, Joffrey or Michael, that you would like to bring up?
Well, I could then talk a little bit about the upload process, because that would be the last part, which typically falls into this webinar.
One of the panelists has asked a question that may be about drawing buildings that maybe you can answer before we go to that. How precise should building drawing be? They specifically ask, how precise do you want it to be drawn in relation to the size for any measurements of the building?
Well, I would say there is certainly no absolute measure. First of all, we often have imagery which doesn't give you that exact an outline of any of the corners of the building. Even in the imagery which Akintola Mercer just showed, you could see that you could roughly see the outline of that building. But certainly, I would say it doesn't have to be exact to the meter. But if there is some visible L shape, or there are some visible courtyard or something like that, then that should be mapped. But the main point is we've got the building there, and we've got the
Mhm.
approximate size of the building, because that's what often counts. And anything else, well, if you can see it well enough, if you've got time for that. Otherwise, other people might come later and refine that. So the main point is that the building is there and that the approximate size is right.
And yeah, this is something I've definitely seen from my experience, my own mapping, where particularly in a heavily forested area, oftentimes you can see the center of a building, but like the corners in particular will be covered by trees. You're not quite sure what the exact outline of the building is.
Yeah, but then you should use common sense. I mean, most buildings tend to have square corners. So if one corner is just covered by a tree, then you should nevertheless draw the corner properly and not let it look as if it would have been intersected by the tree, because that's most certainly not the case. So don't guess widely, but use common sense so that we get proper outlines of buildings.
And just to clarify, I see someone in the chat concerned that they can't see the screen. Mercy's internet connection was lost, and none of us are currently sharing our screen. So don't worry, you're not missing anything right now on the screen. It looks
So
like
if he doesn't come back, and I think that's what it looks like, then I might jump in and tell you something about the upload and the built-in validator. I think that's maybe the best option, unless we have a few other questions.
I don't see any additional questions in the Q&A or the chat right now, so let's go ahead and do that. And then if Mercy comes back online during this segment, we'll just have him wait until after you are done, and then he can pick up where he left off.
Sure. So this is my previous example here. Yeah. Well, yeah, this is also a quite nice example where you can see, well, you can barely see buildings, but at least, oops, that's not what I thought it should be like. Yes, just clarify. Oops, yeah, that's with the building. It's two. That should mean. Yeah. Okay, so for some reason, no, I didn't cut one in here. That's pretty weird. Buildings tools is installed. Yeah, that's, if there is a problem, then one problem doesn't come along. I think I better restart that one now. Let's see what it does. Okay. So just let's make sure. Got the buildings tool, that should be all right. What is most definitely not all right in here. That it didn't. It's me. Okay. That should work. Let's get back to that scenery in here. Okay, now it gives me the buildings tool. Okay, wonders of modern technology. So this is about what we can do in here. I think there is not really room for refining any of these shapes. That's one of those examples where a shape of a building is obscured. We can roughly see this edge. Okay, and it's pretty clear that the building will look like this. Also, parts in here are obscured by the tree. So that's how I would draw such a building. And then I'll make an intentional error. Let's assume that there would be a building, something like here, and I would unfortunately draw it like this. So if we are now going to upload that, and that's simply the arrow in here, then a few built-in checks take place. And then it comes back with a couple of warnings here. So for instance, it sees that here in the scenery, we've got a few unconnected nodes without physical tags. And when I say cancel, the validation results here pop up. And I can open these. I can select one, can right click to zoom to problem. Okay, that is nothing which was caused by me, but okay, these are some bits which need to be deleted. I'm wondering a little bit why I didn't find that building running into the road. That's a bit weird, because that's what I would have expected. Okay, maybe we'll do a little bit differently. You have some shape in here and generate the problem I was talking about, that unfortunately you are slightly intersecting it with the road. If you okay, and now it says unconnected nodes without physical unnamed ways, untagged ways. Yeah, would have expected that it finds that, and if I tag that, tag this one here. It's interesting. It's a building. And it's still, yep, now we've got it. Now it tells me there is a crossing of a building and a highway. So there are a couple of checks built in to the software which cache common errors, such as unconnected roads and things like that. And as you can see here, buildings moving into highways, or would be the same if that wouldn't be in here, but just crossing the other one here, then it would say overlapping buildings, to overlapping buildings. So that is done automatically. There is another choice. You can run this validator manually as well. The validation results are one of the windows which you can find here in this menu if it isn't already visible. Just make sure that nothing is selected, and then hit the validation button, and then it makes a full check. And in this case, of course, it comes up with the same warnings here, such as overlapping buildings and unconnected nodes without any tags, which is certainly some kind of spurious bits. So JOSM has always had this. ID recently added something with this warning tab. And this here has a couple of tests more. There might be some which are not real errors, but if you see something like overlaps or unconnected, then you should really pay attention to that. And certainly we're not going to upload this here. You could override that by saying continue upload, but you should only press continue upload if you're really sure that none of these warnings are really hazardous. And then, yeah, you're here where you can add a comment for the changes you're uploading and could specify the source. You could do this automatically, and then it would add the current imagery layer, which is typically a good idea. And as far as comments for the changes is concerned, well, we've had this question before. I personally try to mention a bit more than, well, it doesn't make any sense to enter the name of the place where you're editing, because the bounding box of your change set is already visible then in the OpenStreetMap history. So that's not the important information. But what I would like to add here is, was it remote adding, or have I been hiking or walking around in the area? So because then this suggests that I have really knowledge on the ground, whereas in remote editing, you typically just see the shapes on the imagery, but do not have any more information about the object. So I would give some context about the reason why I was editing that and how I was editing that remotely, or by surveying the area on foot or on bicycle or whatsoever. So just that anybody else who looks at this change set gets a feeling about the confidence level of that change set. Is it just remote editing, or did I have a closer look at the objects I was mapping? So that's what you should always fill in with something meaningful, not just adding objects. I've seen too many change sets where the comment was just adding objects. Well, of course, that's useless. Try to write a few more words about that. And if you then hit upload changes, then it would be uploaded onto the OpenStreetMap database and available for everyone else to download. So that's about this validation and upload process. And I think that brings us more or less to the end of our talk for today.
There's a question that Mercy answered in the chat. So just sharing with everyone. Someone asked if they see a stream or river has been mapped as a road, what should they do? And then Mercy responded to click on the feature and change the feature tag from road to river. Would it be possible for you to demonstrate that, Michael?
Sure.
Just how you would change the tags on a feature?
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, here we've got, okay, let's just add something here, maybe an access highway here. And yeah, and someone considered this as a stream. So now you'll see, well, this is maybe kind of a service road or something like that. Make sure that you're in select mode, so nothing else is selected. You hit the S key in order to get to the select mode. Select this. And then what I would do is, you see, waterway stream. You first delete this so that it has no tag at all. And then you can go to your presets menu and say, in this case, maybe you would call it a service road, apply the preset. And now this is highway service. So if it's a completely wrong key, just delete it from here and then apply a new preset for the proper object. And yes, feel free to correct anything which is definitely wrong. Sure. Yeah, let's also see that there is a question on the Q&A window. If there is a list for the most critical tags and mapping in connection with humanitarian mapping here, must admit, I'm not aware of a website which collects specifically humanitarian tags. So unless one of the other presenters knows one, I think we don't have one at hand.
Yes, I'm not aware of any website that sets priority by tags of what needs to be mapped. Much more often, it's done by geographic area, which is what the tasking manager does. You can go onto the tasking manager, click on explore. So you can find the tasking manager by searching online for HOT, H-O-T, tasking manager. That'll bring up the link for that in whatever search engine you are using. And then go to that website. And then if you click on explore projects, it will by default order the current projects that people with humanitarian or development projects are currently mapping by order of urgency. So you can see which projects are currently the most urgent and map those. And those are, the tasking manager will show you a defined geographic area, and you'll have the option when you're exploring the project to open it up in JOSM.
Yes, and I see that there's another question. Yes, if you delete something, that you might easily bring it in some kind of conflict. Well, that means there are two suggestions. First of all, is particularly when you're mapping with the tasking manager, it is a good idea to save pretty often, particularly if other people are mapping adjacent squares, because then there is a certain danger of running into some conflict. And well, how to deal with it, that would be one part in our next webinar on advanced JOSM, which is due in May. I will be talking about how to do conflict resolution. So just be patient and you'll get a full explanation of how that works in JOSM.
And I see that Mercy is back. Mercy, will you be able to continue your section from where you lost connection?
Okay, please let me be an host so I can share my screen.
Oh, yes, I will do that right now. Sorry about that. There, you should be able to share your screen now.
Thank you. Yeah, can you see my screen now?
We see your JOSM.
Yeah. So where I stopped the other time is showing how to map out buildings. So I'll be showing how to map multi polygons now. So and how to use the shortcut key to join them together. Like without using your X. So I'm going to use my selections key X to select every building features and hold down on your shift to multi-select everything. Now, can you see that? So there's a way that you can come here to your Tuesday. You're going to see create multi-polygon. That's Ctrl B. That's the shortcut for it. Create multi-polygon. So when I press on it, it's going to join everything together. And I can use Ctrl J to join the polygon I selected together. I can use Ctrl J to join everything together. So use your Ctrl J now. You're going to see that everything has been selected together to make this to form a single polygon. Okay, this one is. Can you see now? To form a single building and they give it a well-shaped building. So, and also, if you want to make a building in circle, you can just do well to, you are going to make use of your control key. This one is just like an example. So I want to let it to form a good circle. You just press your keyboard shortcut, that's O. So to form a very good circle on where you're mapping, that's also shortcut of O. And also, if you are taking out an errors, so I'll be showing the common errors. I think Michael has done that. Well, I will to do it again to let us all understand it very well. Like now, this place now, there's a fleet here. Let's just have like, and you're not trying to save it. It's going to tell you that there's overlaying building. So you don't have to go back. This part, you have to check your errors very well carefully while mapping. So you're going to make use of your selection key to separate and check it very well. You can also delete it to see what you have mapped, if it's correct or not, and map it again. Okay. So you just have to zoom in and use your X to cut your S key to reduce the space. So this part here, you're going to make use of your shortcut key. After selecting the both buildings, use your shortcut key Shift J to join the buildings together to form this particular shape, and also this place too. So you're going to use your Shift J, and you just have to correct this person's and use your X key to readjust the building. Okay. So that's, hope you can see this one now. So I want to map it in using our shortcut key Shift J to join the buildings together in this particular part. If you don't want to use your X key, so we select every buildings together. So and hold on your Shift J to join it. So and also make while uploading every of your building sets, while uploading your tags, try and check your validation results if you're having any error or not, because it's going to help you to not to mislead your conflicts. Now I want to upload these tags now. It's going to tell me that I'm having overlaying building in this particular place, and you may have lost the particular place. So you can just come here on your validation and check it out, here. Can we see this down here? This validation result here. Can we see this place? The validation result here down the part of our JSM surface. Now, can you see it?
Yes, we can see.
Yeah. So the overlay, you can just easily click on one of it, zoom towards to the problem. So when you zoom to the problem, it's going to take you directly to where the errors are happening. So you can just easily, and now we now have to correct it back and click on everything one after the other and hold on your Ctrl G. You see that the problem, the warning you have here has gone. So that's it. And also the tags, there are sometimes you're going to map and it's not going to, you're not going to use your building tools. You can use your line tools. Like for instance now, you're using your line tool to pick your building. Now it's not tagged and you want to make it to be a tagged building. You're going to click on it, come to your tag and look for what building and click the next one, yes. So and click OK. You see that it has been converted back to building. And even to correct it, you see that the building is not that straight. You can use your letter Q, your keyboard letter Q, to correct it, to make the square corrected. So just click on letter Q. You see that it's going to align a little bit. Let me just show you another example. On how you are going to use your letter Q while mapping your building, and you see that your buildings are not correct, the shape is not that correct. So you want to correct it. You see now, so if you are going to click on letter Q, it's going to let it align and give it a better shape of the building using your letter Q. That's one of the short keys. So I have to delete this. So this one now, we are going to join this one together using our Shift G by selecting all the buildings here, hold on your Shift and click on Shift G to join it together. Okay, and let me make examples of how our multi-polygon look like if while mapping. So you may have a building like this and another building from this end, another building can come from this end like this, and also another one like this. So you just have to join everything. You want to see if my multi-polygon is going to create. So you click on your G. So you see that this is an example of a multi-polygon building. This is an example of a multi-polygon building, like where I can move. Like you see now, like it's showing the blue color because the two of them are supposed to be together. So see, this when the two of them can move together because we selected the two of them together and they're working in the same function. So this is an example of a multi-polygon building. So do we have any question? Is there any question? You can do way to ask any question on this section.
Nope, there are no questions right now.
Okay. They're asking a question now, but I don't understand the question. Please, can someone help me with that? Jeffrey or Michael, they're asking about the.
Oh, are you wondering about the question about the appearance of your JOSM?
Yeah, no, I have to. Yeah, I'm gonna set it up myself so to look exactly from like. So
Yeah,
maybe
I'll
they
be
are
making
complaining
just a
about the
bit
dressing.
black, yes.
Okay. Okay, and that's all for this section. Thank you.
Thank you, Mercy. Who will be presenting the next section?
I think we're done.
Oh,
I mean, yeah. So typically that was the last part.
okay. Just a moment. I have a slide that I want to share. So here are resources that you can use if you have any follow-up questions or if you want to learn more. You can email the people who have been presenting today, Joffrey, Michael, and Mercy, by emailing either mapper-support@hotosm.org or training@hotosm.org. We also have a Mapper support channel in Slack. You can go to slack.hotosm.org to sign up for our Slack. And then once you are in, you can go to #mapper-support to ask any questions that you have anytime. People frequently ask for advice on how to map particular features like confusing buildings, or if people can identify things in somewhat blurry imagery. And then you can also find additional resources on either the YouTube channel, which our YouTube channel is HotOSM. And also you can go to the learnosm.org website to find additional resources. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you, Joffrey, Michael, and Mercy for presenting today. Yes, thank you, Joffrey. There is also, do you want to talk a little bit about the training working group, Joffrey?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the hot working groups are open for anyone to join if you want to participate more. Yeah, so that includes the training working group. Most of the things we do is contribute or improve Learn OSM, what Ben shared on the slide, and also to facilitate these trainings. We do meet I think once every month. Michael can correct me, but yeah, anyone is welcome to join us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joffrey. Does anyone have any final questions or final comments? Okay, not seeing any, I would like to say thank you again to everyone. Thank you, Joffrey, Michael, and Mercy for sharing the training today. And thank you everyone for attending. We're really great to have you here. And please do keep an eye out on social media or on the hot@openstreetmap.org listserv for announcements about future trainings. This one will be available Monday on the Hot YouTube channel. And someone also brought up the idea of having audio only versions of trainings. That is sadly not something that we currently have, but it is a good idea for regions of the world where internet access is less reliable or not as fast. So that's something we will think about. In the meantime, there is the learnosm.org website that you can check out for resources. But thank you for proposing that idea. Thank you all again, and have a good day.
Yes, and thanks, Benjamin, for hosting this session.
Thank you. Take care all. I will now be ending the meeting.